I'm talking to the former Deputy President and Interim President of the Republic of South Africa, as well as Secretary General of the ANC for 10 years, Union Secretary General for NUM, former Robben Island prisoner, political activist, and still a public leader today. I'm talking to Mr. Kgalema Motlanthe. We had a chat about the youth earlier on, and Motlanthe, and the history of education for black people. We understand that, and Verwoerd's role up to the time and change and freedom that we have, the democratic system. What makes it difficult then, given that we know what the problem is, for us to fix this problem of education? I mean, South Africa has been a democratic country now for 22 years. And we've got the resources now, we've got the policies and so on. What is it that makes it difficult to roll back the effects of Bantu education?
Well, as I said, what Dr. Verwoerd did in engineering the introduction of Bantu education was to take over teacher training colleges with the aim of producing a particular caliber of teachers. And so once his efforts reached a point where the system could reproduce itself, they didn't have to do anything thereafter. So we have to understand the nature of that problem, and as I said, do the same in reverse with a different aim, because Bantu education was a unique system of education in the world. It was the only system that was meant to produce learners who would not later in life be economically productive. The purpose of education everywhere else in the world is to ensure that the products thereof later in life become economically productive. So Bantu education was the opposite.
Yes.
And that's why by merely alluding to it as a footnote, it means we forever seek solutions that don't deal with the systemic problems, but merely address, corporate companies adopt schools, help here and there, take teachers for, upgrading and so on, and the results improve. But those are isolated schools. It's not systemic. The systemic problems remain in place precisely because, we have not tackled them as systemic problems.
Well, that's where I think then the government must be challenged.
Yes.
And I'm asking the question because you've been part of government.
Yes.
So obviously you've got a sense of what's happening in government. And my question then is, what is it that government should be doing and should have done that it is not doing up to this point and going forward?
Yeah. Well, as I said, we've had several ministers of education. The first minister of education was Professor Sibusiso Bengu, whose task really within the 5-year term was to integrate various or numerous departments of education into one department of education. And the second minister of education, Professor Kara Asmal, had to take that forward. Of course, he introduced the system of, outcomes-based, system of education, which created enormous problems. Now, eventually, Minister Pando was Minister of Education as well, and eventually she was a teacher, a classroom teacher. And same applies to Angie Mutseka, who's also brings into the department practical experience of having taught in a classroom. And so she has an understanding. That's why she was able to put her finger on the weaknesses of this outcome-based system of education that worked in places like Northern Ireland and so on. And she was able to put her finger on the knob of the weakness, because In poorly trained teachers, they could not perform both, the administrative requirements, which were quite a load of work, and teach at the same time, because they do the barest minimum required. To the hard-working teachers in the schools that continued to notch excellent results, the teachers there had no life, absolutely no life, because what's supposed to be their leisure time, they had to do the administrative work and still, teach. But for those in the African community who are used to doing the barest minimum required, they couldn't do both. And she was able to go to some of these schools that fared badly and those that fared fairly well. And she discovered that, in some of the rural schools, the entire community, the parents, would prepare meals and go in the evening to feed the learners, because they were all cross-nighting. The teachers and the principals understood that if they are to make progress, then major sacrifices were required. And the rest who just want to go and march and so on couldn't care a hoot about
Let's talk about the June 16 event, right? When it happened in 76, you were already arrested yourself in prison.
Yes.
But you were still a young person, relatively speaking.
That's right.
At the time. When you look at let me call it the consciousness of some of the young people of your time, because even the Steve Bikos were around at that time, and of course the younger ones, Tietsi Mashinini and Khotso Seatlolo and many others around the country, and even some of ourselves, we may not have been political leaders, but we understood that something had to give somewhere, and that you've got to come to the party to push for change. And you look at 40 years down the line under conditions of freedom, and we've already mentioned some of the challenges facing the youth. What do you think is going on in terms of that consciousness?
Well, Tim, progress in life is itself a working out of opposites. And so, those of us who lived under the system of apartheid and the brutality of the law enforcement units of the time had to be on our toes, and this problem was in your face, and something had to be done. If that's removed, take now, the biggest challenge now is unemployment, poverty, and inequality. Because, there's a bird in Madagascar called a dodo. It can't fly. It's a bird, it has wings like all other birds and so on. It never learned how to fly because there were no predators. It was never threatened at any given time. And so complacency is born of, situations where there are no threats. And particularly if subjectively we ourselves, lower the bar. Because if we strive for excellence all the time, then we will get somewhere. But if we are comfortable in our spaces and feel no urge whatsoever to try and improve on our understanding of the world we live in and what else can be done to bring about improvements, then of course we will be like a dodo. We will not know how to, tackle these problems. And of course, solidarity is important from that point of view. We grew up in townships where, I used to do temporaries on Saturdays, half a day, and there were people who used to buy a weekly ticket from Soweto into Johannesburg, a railway ticket, weekly meaning Monday to Saturday. And some of them only worked up till Friday. So Saturday, Sunday were day offs. And so they would pass the ticket on to us so that, you know, on Saturday you could go and do your temporary and something. Now, that solidarity, that spirit of solidarity, is also lacking today. Solidarity is important because if you help those who are less fortunate than you are, it enhances your ability to deal with your own challenges when you know, they visit you. But you know, selfish people never learn how to, you know, to struggle because to give means you must sacrifice something, either your time or your resources. You can't give to anybody if you don't sacrifice something. It's not possible.
I'm talking to Kgalema Motlanthe, the former deputy president and the interim president of the country. We're going to talk more about some of the political issues facing the nation today.